Welcome to My Dental Hygiene School Experience, hosted by Dach Ska. The world of hygiene school can be wild. Hold on to your toothbrushes because we're going to dive into the chaos right now.
What's up, dental nerds? This is Dach Ska, dental assistant, dental hygiene student, and future hygienist. I almost forgot what that was. It's been so long since I've said it. But I just want to review what happened over the past few weeks, and I wanted to pick up where the last episode left off. And the last one where I talked about what happened this week was week 5. And, well, I blinked and 10 weeks went by because I am at the very, very, very end of the semester. Just a little bit more to go, and I'm almost there. But anyway, I just came from a intense clinic session. My brain is fried. So what better way to enjoy my evening, although it's night now, but then, to record a podcast. So if I sound, incoherent, you'll know why, because I'm very, very tired, as people are in hygiene school generally. So, so I think week 5 is where I left off. Let's just go from there. I don't really remember all of what happened, but, let's just keep at it. So by week 5, clinic is kind of the main reason why I'm doing semester 3 again. So, about week 5, I hadn't gotten any checkoffs. And I remember my philosophy was, okay, you want to go for your requirements. Be aggressive about getting your requirements. And I quickly realized that I had not been using my instruments for a whole year and has now come back to bite me. Well, so I didn't know how to use my instruments as well as I thought I did. I thought it was going to be muscle memory. It really, maybe it's only because I'd used them for 2 semesters. And, it's shocking how much you forget in a year not being in school. A year is a very long time, especially when you're learning new skills. And you know what they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. And, I really forgot a lot. So, and because of that, it made me not confident in clinic, because how can I be confident when I'm still trying to remember how to use basic instruments like perio charting? I was like, oh, I could do that in my sleep. And then when I actually started doing it on a human, I was like, ooh, it has been a long time. And I forgot little things like rock up on your fulcrum, like you kind of want to, they've described it to me as like a fan. So like when you're on one side of the tooth, you're kind of lean towards that side. And then as you go across, you kind of inch your way. So when you get to the other side of the tooth, you are tilted the other way. And, I forgot that. And you'd think it'd be second nature, but it really wasn't. So maybe someone who's more experienced or much further along in school, maybe that would be more natural, but in my case, it was not. So I had to really push myself to learn how to use the instruments quickly. And then, just being in clinic, I was doing a EO-IO, and I was trying to remember. So for the tongue, when a patient bites on it, it leaves marks. And I couldn't remember the word for it when there's bite marks on the edges of the teeth. And so with my instructor, we're reviewing it. I'm like, I'm not going to not put anything. So I just said bite marks on the teeth. And I told the instructor, I don't remember the technical term for it, but this is it. And she's like, do you mean scalloping? And I was like, yes, that's the word. But, I kind of get the impression that she was like, you should already know this. And she's not wrong. I should have been studying this whole time, the whole year that I was gone. But, working in a root canal office, that was brand new for me. And that was challenging. Like, it was almost as much work as being in school. Although I didn't have any homework with that, it still was challenging. So anyway, um, about week 5, maybe just a little after week 5, I met with my instructors, two of my instructors, and they noticed that I didn't have my any requirements at week 5, which week 5, like not doing anything for week 5 weeks. Well, I didn't not do anything. I just mean that I didn't get any sign offs. So yeah, so this kind of asked me what's going on, and I told them like it's been a year. Like this was a lot tougher than I thought, and they're like, "Well, you did tell us that you were ready." I really thought I was. I thought it would just come back to me, and it didn't. And so they said, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put you on a plan." And I'm like, "Oh no, what does this mean?" Like it's suddenly I'm like the project. I don't want to be, but if I want to pass this semester, then I need to do whatever they say. And so I found out what this was. So this plan basically was I get a spiral bound notebook, and preparing for clinic, before clinic, I would need to write down my plan. What am I going to do in this clinical session? So, if I'm seeing a new patient, okay, I'm going to review the health history. Here's all the paperwork I'm going to need for it. Then after that, I'm going to do the FMX and the Pano. And then I'm going to do the EOIOGD, all that kind of stuff. Like I write down everything, because there's something about being in clinic. And even though for me, I never felt like, well, I shouldn't say never, but generally I don't feel like I'm panicking. But there's also this mental, it takes a lot more effort to think, okay, what's next, even though I know the steps, I know the order of appointments, and generally it does not change. I, all I can say is like, I just my brain just wouldn't let me think. I'd have to stop and like review my notebook. What do I do next, And, so putting this notebook together, I'm like, what is this going to do? But I'm like, well, I'm going to do it, just to make them happy. And, using it a couple times, it was actually like helpful quite a bit. In the past, I had done sticky notes, and I just put them on my countertop that I was working in, the operatory that I was working in, and refer to that, which, I mean, yeah, that can definitely have its value too. Especially when you're trying to just quickly look like, okay, what's next? But for me, taking the time before clinic and just, I'm going to sit down, like no pressure. I'm just going to review. Okay, I have this patient, if a new patient, I get all the paperwork. I fill out all the paperwork as much as I can. So if I know of any medications or, just putting their name and the date on it. Well, maybe I wouldn't put the date on it just because, people cancel, and that's very, very disappointing. Anyway, yeah, so nothing revolutionary, but something about writing it down, I don't know, I was just helpful. And I didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever, because, you don't want to admit that your instructor was right. Why would we do that? They've only been in the field for 20 years, 15, 20 years, But no, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, it actually was very helpful. They were telling me that for each clinic session that I have, I should spend probably an hour preparing for each appointment. And, sometimes this may look different. Like if I've seen a patient a couple times and, I've scaled one quad and, the next one is just scaling another quad, there's really nothing else to do, then I'll be like, review OHI and then scale lower left, pretty basic. But the nice thing is, then I can just be like, oh, we used this anesthetic last time. Important to note those things. But yeah, then there are other times where I review something and I'm like, oh, okay, I have to do this riff, or like review the radiographs. And, I don't know if every school does this, but what we do is and I've talked about this before, we review the FMX that we took, and we have to go through and say what we need to do to make each picture perfect, basically. So horizontal angulation, which is pretty common. if the contacts are not open, or a lot of time it's like moving the film forward to get the distal of the canine if you're doing a bite wing, that kind of stuff. So you have to go through each one, and I mean, that can be kind of tedious because each instructor grades a little bit differently, and you know, you just have to kind of learn what each instructor likes. And and there's a lot of like, well, if you put it, I wouldn't mark you down, but if you did put it, I wouldn't mark you down either. Like, it's just, that's one thing I don't like about it, is just it's not black and white. Like, A plus B does not always equal C. You got to figure out how to get C sometimes with using E or F. I don't know, I'm just making this up, but I hope that gets my point across. So anyway, there's a second part to this plan. So in my notebook, I have my plan for the clinic session, but then on the other side, after the clinic session, I write a reflection about it. So this is where I write down, okay, here's my clinic session. Today we did this. I can say like, oh yeah, I did my explorer competency and I struggled going around the canines. That's okay. You can put that. That's exactly what it's for. But one thing that my instructors told me too is, if you do something well, write it down. Like, you're supposed to write down your good things too. Like, it's not all about the negative. And so I was like, okay, that's good, And like, there were some clinic sessions where I'm like, I think I did well on this, and not to like toot my own horn, but just be proud of my accomplishments. I would say there's nothing wrong with being proud of your accomplishments like that. I mean, only you really know what you're going through hygiene school. And, some instructors are naturally more encouraging and may say stuff like that, but not every instructor is. Some are just, you need to know this stuff. And, it can seem kind of cold-hearted. But, if you're at a certain level, there are certain expectations as well. So anyway, I did this plan after. So let me back up here. So before the clinic session, I would show my block instructor, the instructor that I work with closely during the clinic session, to show them that I actually made a plan. They would acknowledge it, put an initial on there. And then I would meet with them once a week to go over my reflections. And this was, 5-10 minutes max. And then, so we kind of, quickly go over like, oh yeah, here's what you need to work on, or like, oh yeah, you had a tough clinic session, what happened there? And, or like they knew what was going on. And so I think, it was actually good to have that kind of communication with my instructors. Communication's a really, really good tool to have. So, definitely keeping contact in communication with your instructors, especially when you're struggling. I mean, if you're doing really well, like say like, oh my gosh, I just got this patient done in 2 appointments. Like 2 weeks ago, I mean, I was on my 4th appointment and I was still not quite there. So, I mean, that kind of stuff, like if there's an instructor you really connect with, like definitely say, hey, like, I'm really excited about this. Like with one of my instructors, I mean, there are some, like either a quad that I did, a quad that I scaled, or, whatever. I would say to this instructor, like I knew it wasn't perfect, but I'm like, I feel really good about this. And she was like, you should be proud of this. Like, enjoy this moment because, you're seeing your progress. I mean, just seeing your own progress can do so much more for you than, positive affirmations. Like, yes, I am a good hygiene student or whatever. Like when you see that I just use this instrument, I just, got that interproximal calculus, like, wow, like I did it, and no tissue trauma. It's like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing growth, but, also remember hygiene school is a lot of highs and lows, and probably honestly more lows than highs. But, I've talked to some people that have graduated recently and they're working out in the field, and they said, don't ever stop because it's so worth it, And to me, I find that to be very encouraging because, I mean, some of those people that told me that, they've been through the exact same program and they know how tough it is, but they keep telling me like, don't give up, you know. And I'm really glad to have people like that in my life. So, you know, I feel like I may be repeating myself from previous episodes, but um, you know, having a support system is just, it means so much. Like even the people who don't fully understand how intense hygiene school is, um, they their support is very valuable. So yeah, so that was kind of clinic. I, you know, would go through a bunch of patients and, you know, get my requirements, but I did run into a few snafus, shall we say. So, you know, I'm trying to get my patients for certain qualifications. And of course, like we had our screening appointments. And so we had our first one, which I mentioned that was like, I think that was actually week 1. Yeah, that sounds right. And then we had one that was like, I don't know, week 4, 5, something like that. And so this screening appointment, we had two patients that we were going to see. And so I had one person that was an LG on one side and a mod on the other. And I was like, okay, so they're mixed. But then I was like, in a way, that's actually good because then I'm kind of getting two birds with one stone. I get my mod and I get my LG. And I was like, great. Like, okay, let's keep rolling with this. And then my second one, I had a patient, and so with our screening appointments, we give them a general classification, but it can always change. Like we're not doing X-rays; we're just doing a PSR, which is, you know, if you're not familiar with that, it's just a very quick like perio chart that basically just shows, I mean, general information. You know, give us an idea if there's any bone loss, but you know, I mean, things can change. Like we take a X-ray and we see, oh my gosh, this person has like a lot more than the X-ray or than the perio chart showed or the PSR. So I mean, you know, I this patient was classified as light, and I was like, great, I need a light. And so I brought this patient in. Uh, he came in, we did X-rays. You know, we kind of got the appointment started, and then he had to cancel our next appointment. I was like, ah, dang, okay. I was like, okay, well, I have this appointment open. Do you want to take that? So he said, yeah. A few more weeks go by. I was going to see him again. I think he had to cancel or something. And I was looking at how many clinic sessions I had left. And I basically told him, like, okay, so I probably need to see you for at least 3 more sessions to get everything done. And, you know, so are you able to do that? And he just kind of went unresponsive. He just kind of told me like the first date didn't work, and then he just left it at that. And I was like, so if he can't make it to the first one, I'm probably not going to get to all through his appointments. So I mean, at that point, it was starting to get later in the semester, and I was like, I don't want to play games. Like, I need a light patient. So I was talking with some of my friends, and one of my friends was like, well, what do you need? And I was like, well, I need a light. And his wife is a dental assistant. And she's like, oh, yeah, he's definitely a light. I mean, yeah, there's no problem there. So I was like, great. So I kind of was um, like I set up a time with him. I was like, okay, if you can make like these two, I think I said 3 appointments. I'm like, if you can do this, this, and this, then we're good. And he's like, yeah, I can work it out. And there's one day he had to leave at like a certain time, but it still gave me plenty of time during clinic. So I was like, great. So we set it up. First appointment, you know, we got a bunch of stuff done. Second appointment is when I got him classified. And let me tell you, like, so he was not screened. He was just a friend that I brought in. And so for him being screened would have been helpful, perhaps. I don't know. But he ended up being an LG, or I think the full mouth equivalent of 2 quads of LG. And I was like, oh, really? And it's like, you're putting all your hopes and dreams into this investment, really, and then it turns out to not be what you were hoping for. And so I was like, well, crap, what am I going to do? So, I mean, I was already seeing him, so I tried to get my other patient to come back because I had a cancellation. Still couldn't come back, And so at this point, I started talking to my instructors, because at least you talk to them, maybe they can work something out. They can help you either strategize, or they can help you, like, oh, well, we have a patient here. Why don't you just take them? Great, And yeah, so I mean, I just start talking to my instructors, and they're kind of like, okay, well, we still have a few weeks left. Like, let's try and get this done. They're tried to offer a few ideas. So I started looking for another light patient. Our front desk lady, I emailed her and I was like, hey, do you have any light patients? I started talking to other people in other cohorts, and I was like, hey, just looking for a light patient, And I was getting other requirements. Like, I was getting most of everything done. I got all my observations done. I got all my competencies done. I had a lot done, and I'm very proud of how hard I worked to get all those. And because it's me against this degree, and I'm gonna win. I promise you. Like, that is a for sure thing. But I still was not finding a light patient, and I was running out of time. And so I think 2 weeks before the end of the semester, I was sending a message, and then also one of my patients canceled too. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I started very insistently texting other people in other cohorts, and I'm like, hey, can you ask your class? I need a light. And at this point, I needed a light that was worked up, meaning all the x-rays, all the exams were done. It was just a matter of getting the cleaning done. And I mean, at this point in the semester, like, if anyone had a light patient, they probably got them done anyway. And it is what it is. So and probably for 2 weeks, I probably annoyed so many people. And then, I mean, some people were very nice about it, and they're like, I'll text my class, and then like, no one has any light patients. Or I was also looking for a recall at that point, and I'm just like, my world is crumbling. That's just what it felt like. No one has a light patient for me. I can't just bring one out of thin air. So I was pretty discouraged, and the end of the semester's coming, and so we had one of our screening patients that hadn't been seen yet, and they're like, hey, we can do this, maybe this will work out. And so I took the screening patient, and I was just like, well, I'll see what I can do. But so I mean, getting to the point of the story where it's not completely resolved yet, so next episode maybe I'll have some information I can share. I don't know. But anyway, meanwhile, so that's all of clinic. I mean, I worked hard. I struggled really hard with the Gracies, especially the 11-12. That one, I don't know, there's something about it that just my brain would not click. I had 3 different instructors show me how to use it, and I still, I couldn't get it. And I had an observation with one of my instructors, and so it was for the 11-12 and the 13-14. Okay, so I can do this, like, it's an observation. My instructor gave me the sign off for the 13-14, but the 11-12, I didn't get it. And she said that I saw improvement from the beginning of when you started using it to after some guidance and some instructions. She saw improvement, so it's like, okay, good, I got improvement there. But the 11-12, she's like, I didn't see it. You still need a lot of work on that. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, this is an observation. Like, it should be like a quick 5-minute thing. And, like, okay, yeah, you got it. No. This instructor pulled up one of the other chairs, like an assistant chair. She sat in it and she was trying to guide me. And also, like, on this particular appointment, I was working on I think it was like a mod quad. And I was running out of time, and she's like, "Oh, you need to use this one right here." And it was a very stressful situation for me. Meanwhile, I'm trying to like be professional in front of my patient and all this stuff. And just it was not a good opportunity for me to learn. I was too stressed out, and I was under the gun. The clock was ticking. We had to dismiss our patient soon, and I wasn't even done the quad yet. So not every opportunity is ideal for getting sign-offs. I remember, I don't know, one of the earliest weeks that I was trying to get a sign-off. It was the observation for when I started working in the patient's mouth. I was not feeling it, I was like, if I do this observation, I'm not going to pass. Or maybe it was a competency, I don't remember, but I was just not feeling it. And so I ended up not asking my instructor to observe me, which honestly, I think that was the right call because it gave me a chance to get my fingers working better and getting that feel for it and not being so uncontrolled with my movements. And then I don't know if it was the next one or the one after, but soon after that, I actually did my observation or competency, whatever it was, and I did fine on it, honestly. So there's nothing wrong with taking a little extra time. Just make sure you don't take too much, like I did. Basically, learn from my mistakes. Anyway, yeah, so, overall, clinic is always intense, but, clinic is, what else do you say about clinic? But I will say this one last thing about clinic, though, for my recall appointment. After begging and begging people, basically, to get this to happen, one of the other cohorts had a recall that they had seen, and they're like, okay, here's a situation, like it's a recall. Yeah, like patient's super nice. Yeah, you can do this. And I was like, okay. And so the patient was a light, so that was great. But I had to do their whole appointment in one clinic session. And for me, sometimes we don't even get to the exams until the second one, like the doctor's exam. So I was like, okay, I know the plan. Luckily, she was not due for X-rays, so that saved a lot of time. But man, I had to fly through that appointment, and I was constantly watching the clock, and I was just like, this has to happen today. And like sometimes I can get pretty determined, and I'm not saying determined equals skill or accuracy, but to get it done, like I was pretty determined that day. And yeah, so I had done as much as I can. Like it helped the patient had been there before, so it's just a matter of updating information. I was lucky enough when I was doing my perio-charting, we had someone on lab duty, and so she was there. I just kind of called out numbers. That saved a lot of time. I tell you, like, oh, I want AI to get to the point where I can just say into a microphone or something. I'll have a microphone attached to my face or something, and then I'll just be like 232, 232, 234. Oh, effrication, blah blah blah. But AI is not there yet. I know people are worried about AI taking over the world, but I'm not worried about it because it's just not there yet, in my opinion. I want it to do so much more. Anyway, that's getting way off topic, but I do look forward to having tools that I can use to help me with my clinical sessions. So, yeah, I mean, for this patient, so for the recall, because she was a light, I was able to get a corona polish and fluoride in there as well. And I mean, that's one of the last few things, one of the sign-offs I needed. So yeah, I just think that I wish I'd done this sooner. But I mean, it was a good experience. I got the patient done in one appointment. I mean, for someone in semester 3 to be doing all that one appointment, that's kind of a stretch. And I'm not saying I'm any good. I'm just saying anyone in semester 3, so that your first semester seeing patients. Yeah, that is. I mean, I'm glad I did it because I feel like I'm really pushing myself to go faster because every semester we got to go faster. So anyway, but we have I got it done. So that's the most important thing. The next thing I want to talk about, done with clinic for now. The next thing I want to talk about is a few of the classes. So I mean, biomaterials. That's an important class because you're working on restorative, and I know not every state has hygienists doing restorative. Washington is, and I mean that's part of the reason why I got into hygiene, to be honest. But after doing several weeks of we're doing amalgams, I was like, ugh, I don't know if I really like this. But at the same time, I also am aware composite's going to be a lot different when we do that next semester. But then also, I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, I'm still trying to get my grooves to have the right shape and all that stuff. So I would think in semester 6, if I'm like really good at it, maybe I will like composite or like doing restorative. But for right now, I'm learning, and I'm not going to say I hate it. I'm just going to say I have a lot of work to do. And I mean, I don't know why I always like to sprinkle in a little life advice or whatever, but I always like to put a positive spin on it. So instead of saying, oh, I suck at this, I'm just going to say, I still have a lot of learning to do. And I think in a way that acknowledges how far I've come because, week 5, I guess it wasn't until week 7 we started doing amalgam fillings. But yeah, they've improved a lot since then. And like honestly, even right out the gate, because I do have that experience of having one semester of doing amalgams, I feel like I'm doing a little better than someone who's just never done them at all. But I'm proud of the amalgams that I've done. I mean, it sounds so silly saying it out loud, but honestly, like, really, be proud of your little accomplishments. Like, yes, I did number 18 MO, and my mesial marginal ridge didn't break. Mesial marginal ridge. I can tell I'm tired because it's hard to get my words out. Anyway, so, I mean, that in itself is a good feeling to be able to keep that up. Yeah. So we also had, there's biomaterials, and then there's the dental hygiene class. So that's just like dental hygiene theory. You practice instruments, you learn about different aspects of clinical dental hygiene. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say about it because that's just pretty straightforward in my mind. It was good review, we'll put it that way. And then perio class. Perio class was, okay, so I've taken perio before, and it's not an easy class. Even retaking it, it's a little easier because I now have this overall view of the whole subject. So now this is review, bringing that information to the front of my mind again. But yeah, like it's really involved, that class. But I'm glad I did it because, I mean, this was taught by a different instructor than it was when I took it last time, which, I mean, I felt like it was actually a very similar experience, but I like both instructors that taught the class. So I think that it was just good to hear a different perspective, honestly. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I did well on the quizzes. I think there was like maybe one or two that I didn't do so well on, but sometimes it's just it was a harder subject, or maybe I didn't study as much, you know. But the fun thing about taking a class, so that like I had mentioned before, I'm just auditing these classes, so I could get a 0 on everything. It really isn't going to matter. However, I do acknowledge the fact that it does reflect on me, and so if I take this quiz, I'm still going to study for it. And you know, when I get that 92% in on the quiz, you know, that's a really good feeling. I think there was one quiz I even got 100%, and I don't know. I feel pretty good about it. I think anyone who does well in anything should feel good about it. So, yeah, I mean, Perio class, I enjoyed it. That's, I mean, I feel like there's not really a whole lot to say. I do know for pharmacology, I mean, I feel like pharmacology and Perio, similar levels of difficulty, but for me to learn pharm, and it's a little harder, I'd say. Just because I like with Perio, like it's related to biology and stuff like that, and it clicks with my mind. Like I'm not saying I got like A+ in the class or anything, but with pharmacology, the concepts for me were a lot more abstract, I guess. And so yes, you do talk a lot about biology, but there's a lot of things that are seem unrelated to anything I've ever learned about before. And I've said this before, but you know, um, I mean, it just makes it a lot harder to learn. So I mean, I still passed the class the first time around, so I'm happy about that. But even the second time around, it still was a challenge. Like it was easier. We just did a lecture. The next week we have a quiz. Okay, I did well. Like I think there are some quizzes I didn't even study for, and I still did really well. That doesn't mean I'm good at pharmacology by any stretch of the imagination. Because if you ask me now, like, oh, in week 10, what you learned about, could you do a quiz on that? I'm like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. Anyway, but I mean, yeah, overall, it's been a good experience. I was talking with the program director um, recently, and I was saying, like, you know, I wish I didn't have to take all the classes. It didn't start off that way, but because I need to, you know, get some refresh on some other subjects, it was just helpful to audit more classes. And I did end up taking all the classes. In a way, it's good because that means semester 4 when I start, I'm not going to be like, oh, I didn't remember what it's like to have this many classes. But I do have to say it is going to be a how do I say this, like a shock in a way, because the past semester I've been refreshing information. Going to semester 4, everything I'm learning is brand new. That's going to be tough because I haven't really been in that kind of learning mode since I left school. So it's going to be interesting. And not to say I can't do it. It's just that I'm really going to have to push myself. I'm not going to have a life outside of hygiene school. That's just the reality of it. But, you know, this is an investment in your time. And when I graduate, I mean, I'm not going to be in school anymore. I can, you know, hang out with friends if I want to, you know, like I will have my career. But for now, um, I mean, school is life. And as much as I don't like that, because there's no real work life balance, um, I mean, it's for a time. So you just have to keep coming back to that. So, but yeah, you know, I've had a few finals now at this point. So I'm kind of in week 15, but, you know, I still will have one more episode, I guess, um, talking about semester 3, second time around. Um, so yeah, so I had my final with biomaterials. That was interesting. In fact, I think I may want to save that for the next one because it'll give me something to talk about. Yeah, I'll just do an episode on finals. Um, Yeah, because those are intense. I'm not even sure how long I've been doing this episode for. I've just been going. But yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to say, so, I mean, student life, you hang out in the break room or whatever a lot. At least I do. Sometimes I just put in my earbuds and I can focus on what I'm studying. And I did a couple sessions like that. And like, there's people that, they're on break, they're in, they're out, no one really bugs you. Um, yeah, I mean, I was able to focus so much. And, but then there was one day, so I was studying from a biomaterials. I had just had a tough day. I mean, like I had pharmacology earlier and oh, I was just exhausted. The end of semester's coming up and everything's just accumulating, and then I wasn't feeling so great about clinic. So, I'm studying for the biomaterials final, and so I didn't have my earbuds or anything. I was just, keeping to myself, and there's a lot of people in the break room, and I actually had someone approach me and started talking to me, and I was like, and it's not really unusual. Like, I sometimes will talk to people I don't know, even in other programs for whatever reason. Like, it's not that unusual. Someone you don't know walks up to you and says something. So, like, I wasn't like, who the heck is this? I was just like, oh, someone's wanting to have a conversation. Cool. Um, and so, so she came up to me and she's like, do you have a podcast? And I was like, yeah. Like, I was like, yeah, like almost like, how did you know? Like, who told you? But she actually found me through the Dental Hygiene Basics podcast. I got interviewed on that podcast. And so because of that, she found my podcast. And of course, like, I don't talk about specifically which school I go to, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I don't even say what city I'm in because for what I'm doing, I don't feel like that's necessarily relevant. I'm giving my experience, but who's to say this couldn't happen somewhere else? Anyway, I'll come back to that. But yeah, she came up to me and she's like, yeah, like, I don't know. No one's ever talked to me about the podcast before. Like, in my current class I'm in, only one person I've actually told, but, so my classmates, 99% of them don't know. Well, that's not the correct math, but you know what I mean. Most of them don't know that I have a podcast. And so it's just kind of like my fun little secret, like if people found out I had a podcast, I'd be like, oh yeah, ta-da, whatever. So, and she'd actually gone up to one of my classmates, one of them that didn't know, that I had a podcast. And she's like, is that Dach Ska? And she's like, who? Nah, So, I mean, obviously I don't use my real name for this podcast. It's just like my fun little alias, but yeah, anyway, so, yeah, I believe her name was Natalie. Natalie, if you're listening and then that's not your name, I'm so sorry. My brain is so fried right now. But honestly, like, it was really encouraging for me to hear someone saying how my podcast helped them, because sometimes I just feel like I'm rambling. I probably am. I'm probably rambling right now. But, I'm just doing this to share my experience, and hopefully it passes on something to someone else. But in that moment, just before she walked up, I was like super discouraged. And so when she walked up to me and, said how the podcast was good to listen to and she got a lot out of it, I was like, wow, like, I mean, first of all, like, just the fact that I made a difference in someone's life like that, I mean, that means a lot. So, Natalie, if you are listening, you just totally brightened my day that day. And yeah, thank you. So, anyway, I think I'm going to end the podcast here because I have no idea how long this is. But, if you see me in public or if you happen to go to my school, I guess I gave enough details that so if you really, really want to find me, you can figure it out. But, if you see me in public and you know it's me, I'm super social, so I'm totally down to having conversation. Maybe you want like an autograph or something, or no, I'm just kidding. But yeah. Oh yeah. So one last thing before I go. So yeah, I don't use my real name. I don't mention what school I go to, and part of the reason why I don't mention what school I go to, first of all, it's just for like privacy. I mean, like, yeah, I did have someone find out what school I go to, but like I'm not. The whole thing is like, I'm not trying to say this is how it's going to be at this school. I mean, me going through the school and someone else going through the school could be two completely different experiences. And so that's why my podcast is called My Dental Hygiene School Experience. Some people, like I've known some people that have left the program and, it wasn't for them, or they felt like they were being treated unfairly, or, whatever reason. Also, I mean, like, here's my experience. It's going to be different at another school. I'm just offering one perspective. Also, I mean, there's two reasons why I don't use my real name. First of all, I just think it's kind of fun to be like, even if someone did listen, they may not necessarily know it's me, or they're like, he sounds awfully familiar. I don't know. For me, that part's kind of fun. But then also part of it too is like, there's a bunch of crazies out there sometimes. And so, I don't know, you get one crazy on the internet or whatever that decides, I don't like this person, I'm just going to hunt him down, whatever. Not that to say that's ever going to happen, but, I like to keep a certain amount of anonymity. But again, if you see me in public, don't hesitate to say hi. I mean, I'm not going to be like, who are you? How'd you find me? I might ask you how you found me, just because I'm more curious than anything, but I'm not like upset or anything. So anyway, I'm going to end it there. Next podcast, I'm going to talk about finals and the end of semester 3. I mean, I was going to share about what I learned in semester 3, but I kind of already shared a lot of that. I still may just reiterate it just to, make it nice and neat and in a little box. I don't know. But anyway, if you want to find me on Instagram or TikTok, which I barely post on either, but if you feel so led to follow me, I would be happy about that. It's dachska.dental on both platforms. Those are the only two places that I am. And keep following the podcast. If you got value out of this, I mean, write a review about it. Natalie is definitely happy about the podcast, so thank you, Natalie. I know, I've had a few people reach out to me before over Instagram, and they're just excited about the journey. They're on their own journey for dental hygiene. So, I mean, I love to hear other people's stories. I mean, a lot of the people I follow on Instagram are just because they're dental hygiene students. A lot of people that were previously dental assistants that are upgrading their career. They're taking their career to the next level, and I love that. And, I want to hear about other people's stories. So, yeah, if you ever want to contact me, just let me know. Anyway, I'm going to call it quits here, but you guys have been great. Thanks for listening to my rambling, because my brain's fried, so who knows what I just said. Anyway, getting ready for a break, and I'm going to rest up, and, semester 4, fingers crossed. I hope.
Thank you for listening to my dental hygiene school experience.
But
you can find Dak on Instagram and TikTok by searching for dachska.dental. If you have questions for Dak, you can send him a message on Instagram or TikTok, or you can email him at dachskadental@gmail.com. Our host is Dach Ska, and I'm the announcer, Nigel, telling you to stay nerdy and brush your teeth.